I finally know how I'm going to go about my channel. So, I will have an upload schedule, sort of. It's more of a video every week or two. Reason being, my editing style when it comes to playthroughs and stuff like that is meant to take an entire adventure and condense it down into like 10 to 15 minutes. My best example of this is the Cursed Halo video. From what people I know have said, that is my best video so far, and they're kind of accurate about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to use that style of editing for every playthrough like video I do from now on. This will include legendary campaigns for Halo and the occasional Destiny campaign, mod playthroughs like Cursed Halo and SPV3, and eventually Lasso for Halo, which is going to suck absolute ass. Alongside those, I'll be doing lore videos for Halo, maybe Destiny, not entirely sure yet, and I'm working on a machinima as well. I know, machinimas are a dead genre in a lot of people's eyes, but honestly, I fucking love them, and I've wanted to do one of my own for so long. So yeah, that'll be it for this little update, and I hope to see you around. Hello. I'm Famine, and welcome to the story of Halo Combat Evolved. Now, before we actually get into this, I'm going to be doing a series of videos where I go over the stories of the mainline Halo games, and also, after that, do in-depth lore videos. Not in-depth, I guess, but more of just lore videos over, like, certain factions, characters that I find interesting, stuff like that. I've been wanting to do stuff like this for a while on YouTube, and I figured why not do it now, since I now have a channel that is focused around Halo and everything. So yeah, let's get into it. This is the story of Halo Combat Evolved. After a blind slip space jump, guided by coordinates Cortana found in a Forerunner artifact on the planet Reach, shortly before the planet was absolutely ass-fucked by the Covenant, a Halcyon-class space cruiser exits slip space near a ring world. Captain Jacob Keyes, the captain of the Pillar of Autumn, discusses with Cortana if they had lost the Covenant chasing them, her telling them that they didn't, and that the Covenant had been waiting for them when they exited slip space, saying that the Covenant had always been faster in slip space. With that, he orders the entire crew to man their battle stations, including Master Chief, to be awoken from cryosleep. Soon after Master Chief awakes, the Covenant starts boarding the Pillar of Autumn. Master Chief makes his way to the bridge, where Captain Keyes orders an abandoned ship. He gives Cortana to the Chief and tells him to go, as he stays to make sure the ship lands on the ring. While under assault, Chief enters a lifeboat and escapes the ship, with a handful of Marines. They then start making their way to the ring, the Pillar of Autumn also making a crash course for the ring as well. As a lifeboat Chief then enters the ring's atmosphere, the air brakes fail and it crash lands, Master Chief ping-ponging around the inside like a ball and killing everybody inside, leaving him and Cortana the only survivors. Master Chief flees the scene while the Covenant are inbound and eventually meets up with Marines that are held up at a Forerunner beacon. Foehammer, or Echo 419, brings Chief a Warthog and picks up the survivors that they found at the beacon. They then make their way to other landing sites of lifeboats to save some Marines. Chief makes quick work of this, or kills the Marines, depending on what timeline you choose to believe, and gets a Pelican right out of there. Sometime later, he makes his way to a damaged Covenant corvette called the Truth and Reconciliation, where Captain Keyes is being held after being captured. After clearing the area and making their way to a grav lift, they enter the ship. After fighting his way through, decimating the entire crew along with the ship's shipmaster, they find the brig and release Keyes, where he reveals they overheard the Covenant talking about the ring, calling it Halo, something that the Covenant pretty much worship as a holy artifact and also doubles as a superweapon. After that, they make their way to the hangar bay, where Keyes flexes his badassery and takes control of a spirit dropship, and they escape. Their next move is to desecrate the Covenant's holy artifact with their filthy footsteps by finding an island that houses the silent cartographer, which holds the location of the control room that they are trying to find before the Covenant can so they don't fire the ring and destroy humanity. While this is going on, Captain Keyes is on his way to a weapons cache that he overheard the Covenant talking about, that is somewhere on the ring. Once they unlock the doors to the cartographer, they access it and find the ring's control room. They are then picked up by Foehammer and act like tunnel rats as they go underground to make their way to the control room, because no one would expect an aerial insertion from underground. Once there, Chief fights his way to the control room, saving some Marines along the way. When they arrive, he connects Cortana to it, and she figures out that the weapon cache that Keyes is going after is not a weapon cache, and tells Master Chief to hurry and find Keyes before they open it. So Chief then sprints away, which is a canonical thing they do in the Halo universe, and leaves Cortana in the control room to go find Keyes. Foehammer brings Chief to the last known location of Keyes, a swamp-like area housing a Forerunner structure below its surface. He makes his way down into it, eventually coming across a Marine who's gone completely insane and starts shooting at Chief, saying things like, "Stay away from me, you'll never get me." Chief quickly dispatches of this manic Marine and goes further into the facility. Soon, he comes across a door which is brute forced by the UNSC, as it was locked by the Covenant to keep something from getting out. When inside, he finds nothing but weapons and the helmet of one Private Wallace Jenkins. He watches the playback of the recording of what happened, and sees them getting attacked by something that isn't the Covenant. The playback ends, and he prepares to battle space zombies, or the Flood. He then makes his way out of the facility, and as he does, he finds stranded Marines at the exit. As they make their way to a tower that Echo 419 designated the extraction spot, Chief then gets abducted by an alien known as 343 Guilty Spark, the ring's monitor, and he tells Chief that he needs him to help him stop the Flood and teleports him to the library. When they arrive, the floating blue ball tells Chief they need to retrieve the index in order to fire the ring so they can stop the flood outbreak. After agonizingly and painstakingly fighting his way through, he makes his way to the index and retrieves it. Spark then takes it, safeguards it, and teleports him back to the control room. When they return to the control room, the light bulb gives the index back to Chief and he activates the ring. But Cortana stops it and reveals the truth about the Halo ring, to kill all biological life and starve the flood of its food. Chief pulls Cortana, along with the index, from the control room, as Spark turns on him and orders the Sentinels to kill him. After escaping, Cortana uses Master Chief's shield generator to help overload the pulse generators of the ring, buying them time to stop the Moth Attractor from firing the Halo ring so they can figure out a way to destroy it. Once they're done, they then move on to their next plan, destroy the ring. To do this, they're going to self-destruct a Pillar of Autumn, which requires the codes from Captain Key's neural link to do so. Cortana then taps into the ring's teleportation grid, similar to Blue Ball Man, to get them as close to Captain Key's as possible in order to get the codes so they can make the Autumn go boom. The location they end up at is back on the flood-infested Truth and Reconciliation, you know, the ship from earlier that was already bad enough the first time through. But it only gets worse because now it's the flood, haha. As they make their way to Keys, Chief conveniently falls through a hole in the ground and is now back on the ring. He then fights his way to a grav lift and makes his way back into the ship. Once inside, they continue to fight their way to Keys as they hear him struggle against the flood. When they arrive at his location, they find him consumed by the flood, now part of the Proto-Gravemind. Chief pulls a Kyle and punches a hole into Key's noggin, retrieving the codes. Once they're done, they commandeer a Banshee and fly their way to the Pillar of Autumn. Once they make it to the Autumn, they fight their way to the bridge, where Cortana activates the self-destruct sequence. The sentient metal orb shows up and stops it, so now they have to manually overload the engines. In order to do this, Chief has to use rockets or a well-placed grenade in order to crack the shields of the engine. Upon making this realization, Chief gets jumped by moths that follow the light bulb. He then makes his way to engineering, and instead of asking the ship nicely to blow up, he pulls a Doom Guy and uses force and destruction to get his way. After this, he makes his way to a vehicle bay, finding a Warthog and driving along the ship's dorsal structure to an extraction zone set up by Foehammer. Upon arriving at the extraction zone, Foehammer is shot down by Banshees, because why not, leaving Cortana and Chief to find another way to escape. Cortana sets a nav point to launch Bay 7, and Chief drives. Once he gets there, he enters the only longsword docked and escapes. Him and Cortana watch as the ring goes boom and tears itself apart due to the Autumn's detonation, them being the only survivors left in the wake of the ring's destruction. F in the chat for the Covenant and their holy artifact. That's gonna be it for the story of Halo Combat Evolved. I had fun telling the story. I think my version is a little bit better than the actual canonical version, but you know, it's whatever. That's just bias, I guess. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for this one. Next is gonna be Halo 2, then 3, and so on. So yeah, hope you liked the video. See you guys in the next one. Ad Victoriam.